Welcome to Elite Podcasts with your host, Mighty RX. Hello, and welcome to Elite Podcasts. I'll be your host, Max Paul, owner of the Florida Storm. In Elite Podcasts, we'll be talking to the leaders of the SFL, the owners, the coaches, front office staff, broadcasters, etc., to hopefully introduce, inform, and give you unprecedented access. This off-season, we're going to focus on owners. This program will be running in the off-season as it's meant to tide us over until the regular season begins. This is a project I've been meaning to undertake for a while, and I'm hoping you enjoy the results. Enough of my rambling. Let's get to the good stuff. Welcome to Elite Podcast, episode number 3, and I am joined today with some stalwart defensive backs. We have Jon Bond, aka Action Max Jackson, and we have Tony Benefield, also known as Merrick Itera, who I believe still has the record for most passes defense by a defensive back in the league. Am I correct?
Not passes defense. Not that I'm aware of. I've got the record for tackles in the season. I've got the record for individual and assisted and total. And then I broke that record a couple of seasons after that.
John, you saw how I set him up? You're like, oh, no. I don't have that record. No. I have these. I have these.
Yeah. You know, that was Cam Hoffman. That was that Cam Hoffman. You thinking of that?
That was the year.
Cam Hoffman had 26.
Yeah. Him and Justin Jones both made the Pro Bowl that year.
There we go. So having said all that, gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to Elite Podcast. Let's get this show started since we already got the ball rolling. John, if you want to, how'd you get involved in the league? How'd you catch wind of the league? And what made you want to jump in feet first?
Well, Twitch season 10, Mexico City versus Chicago Wildcats. That was the game I saw Ray Bentley go off. And everybody after that, I think that's what made him famous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That boy ran through everybody. Like I remember we played Mexico City twice in season 9, and yes, there were some learning experiences that kind of get our ball rolling for the ensuing seasons. Because Mexico City was a force to reckon with in season 9.
So then I saw that on the front page of Twitch, and I came to work, I think a few days later, and I told Tony, I was like, hey, I just joined this Discord. They're starting a new season. We got to get on this. And then next thing you know, we stuck with it, and we got to make, if you remember that year, that was when we got to, the Sharks had max. We almost all had like max silver contracts. The whole team
we did. It was 1/100th of a point below max silver.
There you go. That was it.
Yep.
And then I got really invested in wanting to win. And a lot of the naysayers that said that we couldn't win didn't make sense. I was like, what do you mean we can't win? We have like a good team. We have all our players are good, which made me run out and get the game copies and dust the Xbox 360 out of my closet. It was sitting in the corner. And before you knew it, I was waking up in the morning, checking my Sims from the night before. And you know how that story goes.
I know how that goes.
And then I get my hard work paid off, and next thing you know, I was applying for a team, and I've been with it ever since.
Nice. So Tony's got your story's kind of the same. He kind of puked you to the league, and hey, check this out. We got digitized avatars running around and knocking people's heads off. This was cool, right? So
yeah, it was I came in and he was making his contract for Max. And I was looking at him, and he gave me the standard 5-minute spiel you give everybody when they don't know anything about the SFL. And you're like, it's football, but it's also a video game, but it's controllerless. And they sim the games, and then they broadcast over them, and then they post them live on YouTube, and you watch them like they're actual games.
That's right.
And everyone looks at you weird. And then if you're like, okay, but you got to just sit down and watch a game, And once they sit down and watch a game, At least that's how it worked for me. I was 100% skeptical. I came into work and he was all about it. He was like 18 hours into running the numbers, like analyzing what he could do. I got this many points. I'm going to go strong safety, blah, 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 blah. I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm not sure how I feel about all that. And then I sat there and I talked to him for about 20 minutes, and then he pulled up the championship game, and I was just like, oh, this is it. This is okay. Do they have more openings? He's like, yeah, man, they've got tons of openings on this team. This guy's he's got a background that you would expect that he's going to know what he's doing. We're like, all right, cool. This is where we need to get in at then. So I went out and made a linebacker and submitted the contract, and it got accepted and everything was cool. But we were still in the window for that new season starting, for season 10 starting.
Mhm.
And our number one CB dropped out, like just ghosted the server out of nowhere, which, was back in the day happened, it happened pretty often. They'd get in and they'd talk for a little bit, and then they'd be gone, and you'd be like, oh, you'd just be holding the bag. So anyways, I didn't know that at the time. This guy dropped, and from my history of like watching football and like playing Madden and stuff like that, I was like, look, man, we can survive without a linebacker. We can't survive without a CB1. We're going to get destroyed. So I was like, all right, I'll go be, Night Train Lane, and you can sit back there and you can be Ronnie Lott, and we will just crush everybody. Like, this is going to be awesome. So I went and remade a cornerback contract and submitted that, and it got accepted. And then we went into the first season, and it was everything I thought it would be from watching it, but it was even better when your guy was out there. Although it is frustrating being a cornerback with the heart of a linebacker that wants to tackle everything, but with the APF build of a cornerback, which makes me paper mache to most power running backs.
Yeah.
But it hurts. I die a little bit inside every time I get trucked or shadow realmed. But for the most part, it's been a really enjoyable ride. Like, this is probably the longest I've ever stuck with any hobby outside of video gaming in general. And a lot of it's due to Jon, like his continued enthusiasm for it, and his unwillingness to just kind of, I don't know, watch a couple games and be like, all right, this team knows what's going on. We're just going to do what they're doing, and we're just going to roll. Like, he's always been about, how can we do it different than everybody else is doing it? Like that first season with San Francisco, like, we threw bear defense in there, and we were talking about, we're talking to other people in the league through Gen Chat and everyone, and then they're just completely playing what the bear defense, like what that formation could do, like its potential, right? And I mean, we had a lot less stars on the field, so it was mitigated somewhat by lack of personnel, but there were some coverages that you could throw out there that were non-standard that people weren't prepared for.
Mhm.
And between that and being fresh to the game and approaching it from like a research perspective, and not something we've been playing for 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, like going all the way back to the football forums, that T-Pat and everybody pop up on from 06, 05, like, from not having all of that knowledge and just being research driven from that side, it was right up Jon's alley. He ate that forum like for breakfast. We worked 12-hour shifts at the time, and he would be on shift, and he would just crush just all this content, and then I'd come in the morning and relieve him, and he'd be telling me all about it and stay late at work. He was just so enthusiastic for it. It was infectious. And then once we got into the season, man, it was, I don't know how you get out of it once you get into it, really.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, since you already touched on Fresco a little bit, and how Fresco, San Francisco Sharks kind of led y'all into Vegas. Tony, so I guess I'll go with Jon. Jon, what I know you and Tony are close. Yeah. Now, do y'all work together, or were y'all friends before work, or in working together you became friends?
No, we met at work.
Okay. But in working together you became friends, because now y'all are kind of tight.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
We're like a week
Okay.
we're a week apart in birthdays. We're
Right.
like very we're like
Okay.
A lot of similar interests, a lot of, there's very few things that Jon will get interested in that won't also interest me.
Oh, believe me, we're gonna touch on that a little later. We're put a pin on that. We're gonna get on that a little later. So Jon, so it was only basically a matter of time before, once you were awarded your own team, you were gonna bring Tony on as your right wing man, regardless. It was only a matter of time. So the way I'm
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tony, were you kind of eager, or because you kind of expected at one point or another that you would be elevated to right, you know what I'm saying, right hand man chair kind of deal.
Honestly, John's better at all that than I am. Like I'm a football fan first, right?
Yes.
Like I just enjoy watching football and watching hard hitting defenses, like the old school, like the '90s Steelers with Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green running around there, just taking people's heads. Ronnie Lott, like guys like that. That era of football is always what I've been into. It's always, anytime I've played games, that's how I always approach them from a gameplay standpoint. So that part of it never lost its grip on me.
Okay.
But the amount of time that's necessary, and I don't think a lot of new players grasp, especially people that like want to jump right into it. Like people, it's easy to do. It's not easy to do well. You know what I mean? Like you can do it and you can be functional, but you're not going to be effective, and there's a big difference between that. And a lot of it is time, aptitude matters to a certain degree. You got to know what you're looking at, but a lot of it's just, especially with APF, like once you have the football basics down, trying to translate that into the playbook that the AI will then take and use and the way that you want them to use it without getting stuck in something, and all the pitfalls that come through that game planning process, that requires hundreds of hours of simulations. Like there's no way to fast forward through a game and get any tangible results out of it. So you've got to go in and set up the sim and load the other roster and actually build a credible defense, based on your scouting reports. So like there's a lot that goes into it, and John was willing to take all that on, and I just kind of helped whenever I could. I'd come in and he'd be building playbooks, at work and going through stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh man, you need to do it this way." And he's like, "Yeah, okay. Well, show me in this game how to do that from 2000 whatever." Like I'd be telling him, like, football knowledge wise, this is what you got to do, man.
Yes.
Like, why aren't you doing this? Or I'd be watching the games and I'd be like, "Oh man, they need to be running this play." And then until you get into it and start looking at the playbook and you're like, "Oh, that play doesn't exist in here." Like, "Oh, APF doesn't do coverage because it expects you to have a controller in your hand and do it just like shade to the inside of the outside of the receivers." So if you're a defensive back, you're going to look like a clown 25% of the time, regardless of how good your playbook is, because you don't have that level of finite control.
Yes.
It's there's a lot to it, and it looks really easy to do until you sit down trying to do it and you get crushed by 60 points in a sim and you're like, "Oh my God, I just put down the controller and walk away." And then you run the exact same sim 2 more times and you win by 40 and you tie. And you're like, "Okay, well, now I got to spend 15 more hours doing this and take a guess, I guess." Because unless you're, Alaska or Tallahassee or now Baltimore, and where, the people that have traditionally been known as the guys that have it all together, like they get it, and once you get there, it's great. It just takes work.
Now I will, once it's weird because we in Florida, well, at least while I was running things, we kind of had the same mindset, right? To kind of not be similar to other teams, not to do things that other teams have done, not to rely on a crutch or a money play, we'll call it that, right? So that's why season 10, we went with no running back, because we were like, you know what, forget this. Every team likes to, we're in trouble. What do we do? Give it to our goal running back. He's gonna save us. And it's like, okay, when we were in trouble in season 10, there was no goal running back to save us. It was like, okay, Ron, throw it some more, right? So it's but in doing it that way, right, John, you can't tell me in doing it that way, it hasn't forced you to learn certain things that had you gone the traditional, let me rely the same way people rely on the same defenses, the same offenses, it wouldn't have stretched you, right? Because adversity is where you find out who you are, right? When you're faced with that wall and something got to move, because it's either you or the wall, or you find a way to get around that wall. Either climb over, walk around, lift, knock it down, something, right? But it's in doing that now, you're leaps and bounds ahead of other teams that took the quote unquote easy route by, oh, this team does that well, let's replicate that. This team does that well, let's replicate that, as opposed to what do we do well? You know what I'm saying? We got Scott Johnson, we got this fresh face second year signet caller, we got a bunch of clutch receiver, Mason Kirby, you know what I'm saying? Like what do they do well? Let's cater what we do to them and not try to look elsewhere. Be like, oh, Baltimore likes to throw the ball to receivers. Let's do what Baltimore does well. That might not work for you because your teams aren't built the same. Your quarterbacks don't look the same. Your running backs don't look. It's so that's where the umpteenth hours that Tony you were speaking of. That's what umpteenth hours of grinding and simming and okay, can Scott run this? Can Scott catch? Can he catch down the field? Can he run the stretch? Can he run the ISO? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, if he can, keep it. If he can't, toss it, right? Because the job of a great coach is to do what? You accentuate what your players do well, and you hide what they can't, right? Because you don't want to set them up for failure because no one likes to fail. So I fully get what you're saying there. Now, having said all of that, how is the hierarchy work in Vegas, right? And we know y'all are the top of the heap. Y'all run things. Who runs the O? Who runs the D? Who's your GM? And so on and so forth. If y'all would like, whoever wants to speak first about how that layout works and over there.
Well, it looks like I'm the head coach again. You said something last.
You don't sound too happy about that. I'm the head coach.
No,
okay.
You said something good last episode when you said you thought you had it figured out, and then you begin to question yourself. And that helped me because, man, was I questioning myself last season? Because I went into it thinking, man, we really had it figured out. We beat, we got stopped at Florida in the playoffs, but I think season 17, I went in thinking we can go to the playoffs again. We got it. We had our best season, and then we played Charleston and only scored 5 points, and then we played DC Dragons, who went neck to neck with Vancouver, and I knew that game was going to be crazy, and we lost that one. And then at the convention, we played Mexico City, and Matt Wilson somehow did this crazy evasion in the.
I remember that crazy cool out play. Yes, I remember that.
And I was just sitting there. We were 0-3, right? And I was thinking, like, man, I thought we were going on the playoff path. We're going to be one of those top 6, top 8 teams that's recognized as like the playoff team that you have to get through. And here we are, 0-3. What am I doing? I'm not doing too. Why is it all falling apart around me? I felt like so. We had to readjust and get back on our feet, and then we went into the playoffs, beat Queen City and stuff like that, and so here I am again, head coaching, and no one that I've brought on to coach has shown me anything that I don't already know, or I can't do better, I guess, right? Because
I mean,
here I am.
I'd say you can now. I would say that is definitely the case. Yeah, I mean, John's done the offense and the defense for pretty much as long as the team's been around. Even, I mean, 3 games into the San Francisco season, his rookie year, he was running the offense and the defense because the owner just ghosted the whole team. Like he just was gone, and
he just handed it off to me. But yeah,
well, yeah, right. Sorry, he sent one message and then he ghosted the team.
There we go.
But he had to do all of that as just
a rookie. You said it right. As a rookie.
As a rookie, 3 games in. Yeah, never done any of that. And watching him put the time in and everything, and then he ran, and I would tell him, like, I would give him what I knew knowledge wise, but then he would drill it in game, sim constant, just running sims to the point where I'd be telling him, like, dude, you're wasting your time. Like, mathematically, you're not helping yourself by running all these sims. It just doesn't make any sense. You don't know what they're doing. We don't know, like, there's too many variables. You're not going to get anything out of it. And he would sim till 4 a.m. every day, until he got 5 or 6 good sims in a row. And then he'd be like, okay, we're going to submit this. And then he'd pick apart every single thing that happened to us that wasn't good. Like, he really took it super seriously right from the beginning. And because, I guess, find your silver linings, right? Like it sucked that he got thrown into the deep end like that, but he ended up learning how to swim pretty damn well. So that's why, when that expansion opportunity came up, that even though he hadn't been around for very long, it was clear that he was, it was a good public recognition of the work that he
Yes.
had put in and the effect that he had had,
Yes.
because people were able to recognize, like, yeah, no, this guy is doing everything. Like, he's ready, and not everybody is, and it's, that's how it works.
So that's how Tony became the general manager, and then we got Slim Shady,
Yeah.
and he really helped with the rookie connection, and
Okay.
really helped build the team after we lost some key pieces like Robert Redford, and we were able to build back up, fill
Yep.
the roster, and do all the. He did all the scouting and all the talking, and told us these are the guys that are going to build you a good locker room. And so then he wanted to do free agency. As a matter of just seeing what was out there and available to him, and try to forge that he could go anywhere and make an impact. I think stuff like
Mhm.
that. So we left on good terms, and I kind of threw the general manager spot back to Tony this offseason for a little bit, until we picked up Justin Reside, who helped with our stats.
Nice. Yes, Justin's that dude. Like,
Well, and that's
So,
he gets his hustle on. Justin's that dude.
and he came in and he said, "Hey, what can I do to help with the rookie draft?" And I said, Here we go. Let's
go.
Here's my draft board. Let's start talking." And he's a guy that's excited and always contributing. So it's going to be great to help him get into the league and learn, and him help us, with his excitement and energy. So we're excited about the draft. And then after that, our scouts play a big part. Doug Britton does the defense,
Okay.
which is something I have always dreaded to film.
Really? Defense?
I don't know. Like, I haven't spent the time to like narrow down all the call outs and just see it. I
Okay.
still haven't quite picked that up yet. For the first couple seasons, I definitely was just putting in a very basic cover, cover three variant defense for the teams, and I would spend my time scouting their offense so I could try to shut you down on defense.
Okay.
And then but for the most part, I would say, well, let's just beat not generic, but a well-rounded defense package that I think is solid.
Mhm.
It may not be what you exactly run, but it's going to be enough that if we can beat this, then in a good day we should do all right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
But
it makes sense.
now we've got with Doug coming in with that and bringing me what the defense is doing every week.
Yeah, that was really where our the last like, what did you say, like 3 seasons?
2 or 3 seasons.
Probably, yeah, like 2 or 3 seasons. That's I think one of the biggest things is responsible for kind of our increase in effectiveness from game to game has been that we've got, dedicated scouts that put the time in. That's what it takes to build a team in the SFL, is you got to have more than one person that's willing to put that time in.
Yeah.
Like, one person can't run the whole, it's evolved to that point. Like, there's too many teams that are good that you can't just put an okay playbook in there and beat half the teams and then scout the playoff guys that you're playing and move forward. Like, you got to scout. Yeah, I mean, you got to scout every single team, because if you don't, if you show up with a generic offense or generic defense, or just, something you threw together real quick, like, it gets exposed. There's just too many people trying. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many people putting in the time now to be able to hide that. Like you were saying, hide your weaknesses and accentuate your strengths. Like, you can't really hide a playbook weakness anymore. And playbooks that were considered strong in the past are not strong now because of that increase in, competitiveness across the board. And it takes those steps of, like, if you're a newer team, or if you're trying to build a new locker room situation, like, you need that dedicated 2 or 3 guys that are going to scout and be able to reliably get that to the coaches, so the coaches can then game plan around the scouting, and then have time to sim, 2-3 days to do the fine tuning before you submit. And it just takes a lot. And like Scott, Doug, Slyn, Rhett Sawyer was our assistant GM. He wanted to step up, and he was able to step up, like, kind of underneath Slyn, and they kind of tackled different areas. They worked really well together. And yeah, it's important. You got to have all that stuff.
Yeah. And so then Scott Johnson's doing our offensive scout. I just want to name drop him, make sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Name drop him a couple
That's
more
what I'm
times.
saying. Hey, anybody that's part of the staff that you want to give a shout out to, this is the time. So that way, not only do they get the recognition from you, that also they get a recognition across the league as to who they are and what they do for the Las Vegas Fury. So if anybody else is part of the staff that you might have forgot to mention, this is time to put them out there. So you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we know you, we know you do this. We ain't forget about you.
AK Jones, unofficial locker room captain.
Okay.
Not an official stat position, but that's important too.
Yeah.
You got to keep people motivated and positive, and he does a great job of getting in there and getting everybody, hyped up for every game. And John made the decision to start having like the locker room voice chat while jumping there during games. So our presence isn't as strong in like the chat rooms and stuff like that now, where it used to be like that's where all the teams kind of showed themselves was in those chat rooms. Now we're all in voice chat talking about the game. So it's
That's what's up.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, those are the things that matter.
Yeah. So I'm glad you kind of spoke about the past few seasons and the hierarchy there, because these past 2 seasons, though, even though you had a rough beginning coming into the playoffs, y'all were one of the hotter teams in season 17, in season 16. Again, you were one of the better teams. You made the playoffs. I believe y'all posted your best record at 8-4 in regular season, right? Y'all were 8-4.
7-5, I think.
7-5 season. Okay. So seeing that the past 2 seasons, you kind of been on an uptick, and now you've tasted the playoffs twice, but it's not enough. It's not enough. So how do you feel about season 18? How things are starting to shape up, because we're in the middle of re-signing, and who's coming back now. Who's decided to either hang them up or go elsewhere or whatnot. So how do you feel that's coming together, and have you begun kind of game planning or putting game plans together as to what you would like the team to look like strategically on the field?
Yeah, I think the last 4 days, last week, I just finished a sim right on 30 minutes ago. So putting it together. I mean, I started the machine. I kept off of it for a while this time. Enjoyed the off season. I let you gotta.
Yeah, you gotta recharge the batteries.
Reboot.
You gotta recharge the batteries. You'll go crazy if you don't.
So I'm excited because at first, it looked really rough losing Rhett, Tiberius, and Slyn. Those are all gold high star players.
Yeah.
But what it did do was free up a lot of cap space. So now I think, interestingly enough, it gives us more options. I guess. So I'm excited because all the key positions are all coming back, right? We've got a quarterback that actually came back. So we don't have to worry about rebuilding a rookie with got wide receiver. We signed John Blades at a higher cost than Gabriel Manning this season somehow.
Didn't know it was possible. But
so I think it's going to make a big impact, and it'll be fun to see these positions work out the way they will, and we're figuring some stuff out. And I'm always one to try different animations to see what happens, and I think we've got some good ideas moving forward. So I would like to do things differently, but as far as like now that everybody's almost got 2 tight ends and everything else, running the ball, getting back in that run game is a big deal for me, because I feel like I propelled Robert Redford to be noticed as a forerunner. So why can't I do that with the next guy? And we've had varying success here and there where it just doesn't work out. But you've seen that Scott can be a weapon. So that's why I'm excited to make it where you don't want him to run or pass on you, because I'm excited.
Good. So question for both of you. We'll start with Tony first. Since you've been in the league as a player, be it at your current location or the previous one, what has been your most frustrating moment on the field, off the field, whatever? You know what I'm saying? Put that out there, and so we can kind of deal with it, and maybe how you overcame it, or if you haven't overcome it or whatever.
Although it is frustrating every time I get run over, I think what gets me is there's certain plays on offense, like as a defensive guy who has done pretty much everything I can stat wise to make my character, or give my character like the ability to perform.
Yes.
For me, it's frustrating at the inconsistency of my position specifically,
Okay.
or like of CB specifically, because it
Mhm.
seems like it sucks to be the guy on the wrong end of the 50-50 balls, and I feel like in general, football is not so much of you're on an island game. Like usually it's closer than that in real life. And in our, our current situation, it's because we can't shade in and shade out, and there is no way
Yeah.
to do it. So it's not, it's not a point and a finger. It's just that because the game does require that, because it's taking that into consideration and we can't do that.
Mhm.
There are some times where even though we're in the right coverage and even though I've got all the stats that I need to be able to at least contend for something,
Yes.
I just get mossed, or I'm 15 yards away from the guy, and
That's the worst.
it's just like that's the worst. Is no one like, man, I'm pretty sure I'm faster than the receiver that just beat me by 20 yards.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But it's part of the game. You learn to love it eventually. You kind of that way when you do perform and you do stick with them and defend the way that you expect to, it feels better because you feel kind of like the odds are against you
Yeah.
out there. So I think that's it. And I wouldn't say I don't know if there's a way to overcome the frustration in that. I think it's just kind of it's a rite of passage for all CBs. Anybody that has a CB character,
Oh,
just,
yeah.
you
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
harden your heart against that stuff.
You're gonna just know as a CB, just like in real life, you gotta have a really, 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 really short memory, right?
Yeah.
Because at any given time, you might give up a play that gives up 6, but your team is relying on you to down the stretch. They're gonna come back your way to try you. Are you able to forget about what happened prior to make the play necessary to either keep your team in it or win the game outright, right?
Right.
You might give up 6 and then come clutch down in the fourth quarter, and you know what I'm saying, Action Jackson comes up and gets 6, right?
Oh man, yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
was it this? No, I think it was 2 seasons ago. I forgot who y'all were playing, and Max Jackson tracked someone down and forced a fumble that I think either you recovered or Slim recovered. It was like 60 yards on it. It was a Monday night game.
It was Denver. It was the Denver game.
It was that game. But that's exactly what you mean, right? What you give up something big, and then you come back and make the play to kind of make up for the fact that you gave up something big. So it's I understand your frustration because I'm a defensive guy as well, right? But if more often than not, if you've done your due diligence, as I know John will do, it's rare that you're going to give up 6. You might give up a big play, but it's rare that you're going to give up a big play and 6.
Yeah.
So
I think that was important to learn early, was the bend but don't break mentality out there. Like sometimes you're in a game where you have their number and you are shutting them down, but more often than not, like they're going to get some and you're going to get some. You just got to hope that you get more than they do.
That's it.
You just got to be happy with that.
John, what about yourself? What's the most frustrating moment on the field, off the field, coaching, since you've kind of been in the league?
Man, do I have any frustrating moments?
Listen, you're an owner, you're a coach, and you've been a defensive coordinator that got thrown into head coaching. So I'm sure they're having some frustrating moments for yourself. I'm sure they have been.
I remember this fake field goal against Tulsa.
Yeah, the fake field goal. The fake field goal.
Man.
That was the roughest one probably. Just watching, because we were down by 2 and all we needed was the field goal and but things you can't control.
Right.
So I try not to get too worked up about stuff like that. Man, frustrations. I can't think of anything too crazy that really. The comebacks, I guess, have been frustrating to a degree. We've definitely had some of the bigger. They look good on film. They're great films, like the comeback that when we thought we had your number, and you came back in overtime. That was
man. Okay, so let's talk about that game.
Oh man,
do y'all remember the first quarter of that game? Because I remember the first quarter of that game like it was.
I think there's 2 pick sixes, wasn't it?
The first quarter of that game was ridiculous because that's the season when we had a star fullback. Jason Williams was our star fullback, and he was doing big things. We were trying to get him to be the first fullback to get 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Y'all decided to knock him out of the game. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And then the following drive, y'all knocked out our number one tight end, who at the time might have been a generic, but he had coach points. So right there, y'all took away all the safety valves for Ron and said, Ron beat us. And we're down 31-10 in the middle of the third quarter. And I'm like, well, I guess, hey, we're going to make the playoffs. We'll be all right. And then all of a sudden, just dragons begin getting unleashed. And it was like, okay, maybe we got a chance. But yes, that game was bananas. That game, but how can I say this? I don't know if you recall what kind of offense you ran that season. Was it feast or famine? Was it more ball control? Was it more West Coast? Because I have a feeling that, particularly for that game, it felt a lot more feast and famine than take, you know what I'm saying, than take what you could and then live with what the defense gives you. Because that's what allowed us to kind of hang around. Because
I think what it really came down to is you guys were the Goliath, right? So whenever we played you specifically, because we knew how respected you were on defense, we just assumed that any of the normal stuff we would try was going to get shut down. So every time we game planned, especially early on, like every time we game planned, it was just like, what can we do that no one else does? Like, I think the first time we played you when we were in San Francisco, I campaigned all week to just not put a single play in the playbook that wasn't a blitz. Just, we need to blitz every single play. Just send all 9 guys every single time the ball gets snapped, because if it's anything that he's prepared for, then it's not going to work. So we've just got to throw, the kitchen sink at him and hope if he catches it, we can drop kick him while he's holding it or something. Like, there's no way, but we've never really been about the grind. That it irks John to win a game 9-7. He'd rather lose a game, 46-45.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I think that's part of what's cool about the SFL is that you've got guys that'll go in there and try to do the power run stuff, and it can be effective if they game plan it right.
Yeah.
And especially if like other defenses don't take it seriously and they don't game plan against it, then you can there's a lot of different strategies that you can implement within the game, depending on your personnel.
Yes.
And it was like in the early years or in the early seasons that we were involved, it was I think a saving grace for us was how efficient John was with cap space. He would run numbers and 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 be like, oh, we can do 2 secondary points here instead of this 1 primary point over here. And then he'd go sim it and be like, yeah, see, if we give him 5 more secondary points here, he gets off the ball half a second faster.
Yes.
And that sort of analysis, that sort of like attention to detail with stuff like that allowed us to make up for a lot of the knowledge gap in the beginning. And then we kind of hit a point where, like you were saying, you start to question yourself, where you're like, man, okay, I feel like we've been making gains every season, but like we're kind of stuck. We went out and we got the players, like we had Fats, on the D line, and he was doing work. And then we had Rhett on the D line and he was doing work. And then the next season we had Rhett on the D line and he didn't do anything, and that's not Rhett's fault, right? Like that's just us not getting like the finer points. You just got to go back in and analyze it. What's going on? What are other people doing different? So.
Understood. So now, having said all that, now we've examined the valleys. Let's examine the peaks. Let's get on a joyful note for a second. John, what most rewarding moment since you've been in the league?
Most rewarding moment. Well, Max Jackson did make the Pro Bowl 7 times. That's pretty impressive.
That's nice. That is nice.
So he's I think he's got. The game wouldn't be the same if I wasn't able to watch my guy perform, watch my player, out there. I wouldn't be as excited to put in the playbook every week if it was if it wasn't out there. It's just how it is. And I want everybody to shine, so I definitely try to take that into account. What other be another one? I Well, that's probably Tony's pick, right? The 3-punt blocks against Baltimore. Is
Oh
that
man,
Oh,
especially
that
after
was
all,
crazy.
especially
yeah.
after all the grief we got for going special teams even and keeping that, and that was the only thing I brought into the league. But that was like at the time, it was. Listen, we can't like. There's 3 phases of the game, and people are only game planning for 2 of them. So let's get a punter. That's special teams. Let's get a kicker. That's special teams. I'll take special teams, Demon, and at least that way, every single game, there's one of the 3 phases that we have a clear advantage all the time. And if that breaks our way enough, then it's worth it. And but you've simmed. I'm sure you've run special teams, Demon, for testing and stuff, and you run the sims, and it's not like it happens all that much, right? So it starts to be kind of like, I don't know if it's worth the points type of situation. And when we decided to keep it that first season, I mean, we went back and forth on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, man, I'm keeping it. Like we
got
to give it one season.
Don't you dare take that animation from me.
Just give me one. And we got to get one full season of data on it. And then we can make a decision. I'll never take it again if it's not, if it's not worth it. And for that first game, for all of those punt blocks and all, I mean, it was so great watching the chat just explode.
Yeah.
Just all the tears, and it was awesome because you felt really validated. And it was a great way to remind yourself that it's good to kind of step outside of what is considered conventional wisdom and look at everything that's available and see what the application is, right? Like that's the only way to evaluate whether or not the application of it is going to be worth the effort. Is just run it.
Is that your peak moment then?
I think that, and then at the end of that season when I was in the Pro Bowl, I blocked a field goal. So I was just like, yes. See, special teams even is worth it.
There you go.
I think that's the best part. And watching Max or John get a team. Like I've probably never been happier about anything in the off season than when, Cam announced that he had been given one of the expansions, and I was just like, it was like, we made it. You're in the big time now, son. Like we've only been less than a season in the league. You got your own team. Like you got the keys to the castle. Like that's awesome. I think those are probably it.
That's what's up. Before we move on to the next topic, real quick. This way, right? Perfect. Yes. Max Jackson, America Terra. Where did those names come from? Tony, go ahead first. Tony, go first.
Oh no, I'm gonna let John take this one first.
Okay, John, where did Max Jackson come from?
I would say Star Wars, but Max Jackson's a little bit older than that. It was this Smallville RPG character that was kind of made to be just kind of the rich, wealthy, do-gooder guy that the name was just kind of cheesy, but I went with it, and then I ran a Star Wars. I do a lot of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. This is why part of the reason the SFL talks to me, because it's kind of like fantasy football, like that's got that kind of role play section to it for your character.
Oh, it totally does.
So then my name's actually Jon Bond, and there was already an Alex Bond. So I was like, well, I don't want to. So there was that opportunity for me to come in the league that way, and I was like, well, there's already a Bond on this over there. He's a recognized safety. I'm going to be a strong safety. I got to different myself. So I just put that name in. And then I think what happened was when Tony went to make a character, he's like, oh, you're going with Max Jackson? Well, then I'm going to pay my Star Wars character.
Yep. My Mandalorian bounty hunter's name's Merrick Itera.
Okay.
So, we'll just, we'll go out there and we'll crush people. Yeah.
Seek and destroy. I like that.
That's right. Yeah, that was the plan.
For a defensive guy, seek and destroy. That makes plenty of sense. Okay. I like it. So, gentlemen, what do y'all do off the field when you're not running the Fury and getting them to the playoffs and giving teams across the league headaches trying to game plan for special teams demon and these crazy defenses that nobody wants to use, blitzing cheerleaders and coaches? What do y'all do off the field, John?
Karaoke.
Yeah. Karaoke.
We work as contractors. I'm sure Tony can more eloquently put it, but we do IT contracting for the Air Force.
Okay, that's good.
And
so y'all are very, very smart people.
No. As he mentioned, we're military contractors. So
I didn't say we work for Google or Amazon.
Right. We don't have our own company.
No, so we've been doing that for a while, and it's not too shabby. And then say karaoke. What else? What else we've been doing?
Karaoke.
Board
We
games.
yeah,
Movie-
yeah.
Tony's
Halo.
a fam. Tony's
New
a
Halo's
family
out.
man, so he stays busy.
I do. Yeah, I've got a wife and 3 kids, so
Oh,
you
nice.
know, yeah, yeah.
I got one of those and 4 kids.
Oh, snap.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
What are the age ranges?
21, 20, 17, 15. The 17-year-old is my only daughter. She's currently with mom out of town visiting colleges.
Right on.
She's a high school senior. So
Right on.
I know that life too
I'm
well.
approaching. I've got a 19, that's a
Okay,
19-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Oh,
So
you're right. So you're right there. You're
a little
right
bit,
there.
a little bit.
You're
Yeah,
right
5
there.
years from now, I'm gonna be a hell of a football coach.
Okay, so gentlemen, we've reached a part of the Elite Podcast where it's your turn to turn the tables and ask whatever questions you please, and I will answer to the best of my ability.
Okay, we talked about this the other day at lunch. What we were
We
going to
did.
ask you.
Oh, wow, is that so? Okay.
Oh yeah, this is a rare opportunity. You don't get,
What do
you
you
don't get to see-
listen. My DMs are wide open 24/7. The wife hates it, but my DMs are always to be 3 a.m. I get that noti because my phone sound my sound is always on
Mhm.
because I don't want to that one time when it's off, I misplaced the phone, I can never find it. I don't want that to happen. So my sound's always on. So my DMs are always open for any questions or any weird commentary. So anyways, what did y'all want to ask me?
What's the best way to put this? Alex Dominguez has
Yes.
one of the best, has the sack record of all
Mhm.
time.
single season, all time. If it says sack in it, he probably owns it.
Yes. So, so what's the question?
So the question is, I thought we kind of had it figured out when we had like Fats Johnson, some other people making sacks.
Mhm.
I believe it has to do with line stunts. I don't think we figured out the line stunts and what they're good for. And we are, I hate to throw this out there, but we are one of the worst run to stopping teams in the league. So our 2-part question is like sacks.
Yep.
What do you do to get them? And those stunts, those line stunts, what's your knowledge about defensive line stunts and their use?
Okay. Start with sacks. Prior to our roster expansion, Alex was a monster. Once we started expanding the rosters to 15 and then to whatever, we're at what, 23 now. Now teams have multiple offensive linemen. That kind of mitigates the damage that your star defensive lineman could do now because he has a counterpart that he has to face on a regular basis. So now what we were able to do to kind of get Alex off the schneid is to find ways to get him matched up one-on-one, right? Because especially at tackle, you run into they run into a lot of traffic and garbage, right? So maybe a running back's coming out of the backfield to chip him before he gets, to start to face his matchup or matchups, because sometimes you might get a double team by guard center, guard tackle, or even all three are tight end. Okay, so finding a way to make sure that matchup is isolated one-on-one. So be it formation, be it with a blitz, it might not be be it a zone blitz or a man blitz. I'm not big on man blitzes because they kind of leave you exposed to certain things. It's one of those, like you were saying, Tony, with special teams team. And if you have an idea, let's not just say, okay, we're going. No, we're going to put it on the field, because that's a big thing. I always say to anyone that asks me, okay, this is what I would do, but before you do what I would do, put it on the field to make sure it makes sense for you, right? So a lot of times, so as for Big Sexy, getting to the quarterback, a lot of one-on-ones was, so whether when he played end and facing these tackles, I made sure that he was isolated on the tackles and no help, right? So maybe I'm playing some 3-3-5 against certain teams and blitzing that weak side backer that next to him to make sure that tackle's occupied and it's him against the guard, or to make sure the running back's occupied, so it's him against the tackle. And you know what I'm saying? So you have to find a way because you're looking at football as 11 on 11. I'm looking at football almost like a basketball where if you got Kobe, you're not having Kobe running into the opposing team center and power forward. You're going to ISO Kobe on the wing, and then you might go ISO on one side and everyone else is sitting weak side, even though it's the side that has the most amount of players. So that way Kobe could go one-on-one unimpeded to get to the spot to get his shot. Right. So same thing with whatever defensive lineman you got. You want to find a way to isolate him on his matchup. Right. So let's say you're week 1, you're playing an opponent that either doesn't have any star offensive lineman or has a star offensive lineman. And let's say it's a star guard. If you got a star tackle, you wouldn't be playing nickel 4-2-5 in week 1 if you're trying to get him to eat, because you're literally putting your star player on their star player, and that's counterintuitive. So you'd find a way to get your star player isolated on a player that's not as good and take advantage of that matchup ad nauseum. Now, again, do your due diligence, because if you run into a team that knows that that's how you game plan, right? There are things that they could take full advantage of to make your life miserable. So yeah, you might get 1 or 2 sacks, but you give up a gazillion yards rushing because you, in trying to get at the quarterback, forgot that you got to slow down the running back before you get at the quarterback.
Okay. So is that where you would implement certain line stunts where the defensive lineman's attacking specific parts of the offensive line because that's away from their star, or do you just kind of ignore the line stunts and like rely on the formations to control your matchups? About
line stunts, now, this is where it gets tricky, because base is a line stunt, right? It's a front. It's a type of line stunt. Though there are no games being played, no one's changing trajectories or whatnot. Everyone just go right ahead. It's a type of line stunt. I bring that up because if you're going to be, let's say, in 4-3 or 4-4 or bear or 3-4 or whatever, you don't want to expose yourself in a way where if this particular team decides to run outside stretch play, or outside zone, or even something of the gut, and you decide to run fan that week because you're trying to get, your ends ISO'd and run around the tackle, they run any kind of ISO play, you're going to feel it the entire game because you're not prepared. Exactly. You're exposing your defense to certain things, right? So you don't want to expose yourself on downs where teams are more multiple in the ways they could attack you.
Right.
So, right. So if you're going to stunt, you're going to stunt in something that you know for a fact that you could take advantage of. So that way, if it doesn't work, you're not left holding the bag looking crazy because, oh yeah, we're going to run a tackle and stunt. And then you've opened the floodgates for running backs to just hit the gap and then Max Jackson is looking at the name of the running back. Whenever your defender's can read the name, it's never a good thing. Never a good thing. Never a good thing. So you just want to make line stunts like season 10 he played end, season 11 he played tackle, season 12. So season 10 and season 12, we ran a ton of tackle and stunts to kind of get Alex in crevices and in ways and fashions so he's able to get into the quarterback's lap. So even if he wasn't able to sack the quarterback, he'd move the quarterback off his spot, which allowed your DBs extra second or two to kind of catch up on the coverage and be able to force either incompletes or even interceptions, right? That's what we did season 10, season 12. Now, we didn't do that on base downs. Why? Because if teams would have run the ball while I'm running tackle end, remember, our tackles weren't stars at the time. They were, role players or generics. So they're slow as dirt, slow as molasses. So if Alex is running inside while tackle's running outside and they run outside, there's literally nobody there to at least slow down the run enough to mitigate the damage to keep it contained. So the first line of defenders is the safety, and you better hope that their tight end or fullback or receiver then put a hand on him, but then he's off to the races. So that's why I'm saying if you're gonna go stunts, you better make sure you do your due diligence, whether it's twist, where it's tackle, where it's whether it's you know what I'm saying, it's twist left or twist right, where it's tackle, and do your due diligence, put it on the field to make sure it makes sense for that week after you've gotten your opponent's game plan or understand well enough what they're trying to do, right? Because there are some teams that like come out heavy. If they come out heavy, I would definitely not recommend running any kind of games, at least not in base. Maybe in nickel, maybe in dime, if they don't run the ball in those situations where if you run that game, you know for a fact it's against a passing situation. Because those kind of games are great against passing, work better against passing than running. And running, if your if your coverage shifts wrong, and it's just because you can't really dictate to make sure, okay, on this down, we run that twist here, and we're going to make sure that our safety is there to back them up. There's no way to dictate that, and because there isn't, do your homework, make sure that whatever damage could occur is damage you can live with.
Okay.
Because there you go. Any was that clear enough, or was that nebulous? Like, let me know if you need me to go even more in detail. I can.
No, I think that was informative enough in the line stump piece.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
What was the other part? What was the other part of the question, John?
Well, it was just about sacks and line stunts. I mean,
That's it. And I
thought it
think
was-
our run
Power running
defense-
game. Yeah, the defense against the power run,
Oh, the power run, you think? Oh, I mean, I don't know
or
if
just
the
like
same as-
or just like the running in between the tackles, I guess. Anything up the middle.
if you like to play man to man, you're gonna give a running plays inside or outside. Period.
Okay.
Because your defenders are the only defenders that are even looking for the run are 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. Those are your safeties. Everyone else is locked up in a one-on-one matchup. So at the snap, they're chasing the matchup.
Okay.
And not focusing on run keys. Ooh, the O-line is firing towards me. Let me run after the tight end. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how the defense thinks, as opposed to the O-line's firing. Oh, it must be some kind of run. That's why play actions don't work as well, right? Because play actions is to suck the linebackers up. So there's a void between linebackers and safety. The reason they don't work as well is because the linebackers don't attack the line of scrimmage off the run play, off the O-line action, right? They just stick to their keys. And so that's about the easiest way I could put it. If I don't know, because we didn't play all that season, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But if you play man, you're gonna get hurt in the run game against man, unless you're blitzing into the run play, right? So if they're running strong side right and you're blitzing your strong safety, you might have a chance to get him in the backfield. Might, because if your strong safety takes a terrible angle, you gave up a touchdown. So that's
I never take up a terrible angle.
Listen here, sir. Okay, I am speaking in theory. Okay, but yes, so definitely. So if you're getting gashed in a run game, examine whether or not your front to make sure that you're occupied. Because when you get gashed, how are you getting gashed? Is the O-line getting to the second and third level? Are guys just missing assignments? That means they're supposed to be here and they're not here. Or is pre-snap? Or guys shifting out way out of the way, and and not being where they're supposed to be when the ball is snapped. You know what I'm saying? So there are some differing factors that could cause you to get gashed in the said running game. So you got to examine that. So, but if for the most part, if you play man, you run a great risk of getting gashed because like I said, the defenders follow the matchups as opposed to play the keys. And then when you get gashed, it would behoove you to examine what caused it, right? So if let's say they ran a strong power O, and on this particular set, you shifted weak side and your linebackers decided to shift weak side pre-snap, like there's nothing you could have done. Nothing you could have done to bar not running that defensive formation, so
Right.
that way they don't shift all over like they ain't got no sense prior to the game. That there's nothing you could have done at that point. So it's again, it's doing your due diligence, understanding that okay, they like to run strong power out of certain sets. Maybe you might have to go a little heavier with your front. So your base defense might be a little heavier, but you gotta understand if you're heavier front, that means you're thin in the back. So you gotta, if you're willing to give that up to stop the run, have at it. I'm not that type. If you want to run the ball, have at it. I don't care. Run all you want. We're gonna score touchdowns. You better hope you score a lot of touchdowns while you run the ball too. That's my mindset.
That's been our experience with you. So
that's the mindset. And it's worked more often than not. Sometimes running back score 5 touchdowns, Jerry McChesney, and sometimes they, you know what I'm saying, and sometimes they don't. And then when they don't, you got a chance. So that's that. So about power running is definitely if you're being gashed, be it outside or inside, I would definitely tell you to go back and watch. If your team shifted out of the way, there's literally nothing you could have did. If that's the defensive formation you were going to use, there's nothing you could have done to prevent that from happening. If your defense was in the right spot and it still got, what was the coverage? Did the safeties run away post snap because you're playing, let's say, we'll stick to strong power. Were you playing cover 3 weak? So Max bailed at the snap and the free safety came weak side. You expose yourself with that, knowing they ran strong side, right? So it's also about the coverages you're going to utilize to make sure that the guys are filling the lane that you believe to be more susceptible.
okay, that makes sense.
So we're good. Anything else?
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, if you give us more time, I'll come up with more stuff. But
Do you realize this thing has to end? I gotta package it in a way so people want to consume. They're not going to consume something that's 3.5 hours. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, what is right. I can slide into the DMs later. I got permission now, so
hey,
I'm solid.
The DMs are wide open. No worries at all. So,
but yeah, thanks for having us though. I mean, for wrapping it up. Yeah, we got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely. Like I said, I'm thinking of one more for this off season, especially with Christmas and New Year's around the way. I don't want to occupy people's times when they're supposed to be hanging out with their family. They don't need to be hanging out with this weird looking guy here. So we'll reconvene this after season 18, and in the off season I'll probably hit up a different group of owners. And if y'all want to come back, just let me know. We'll come back and talk about how the Fury came to. Hey, how'd y'all win the season 18 championship?
Right. How'd you guys get so much better at run defense?
Hey, you know what I'm saying? So we could do that. So
right.
So with all that being said, I did it right. For Jon Bond, Action Max Jackson, for Tony Benefield, Mary Kaitera, Bounty Hunter of Bounty Hunter. I'm Max Paul, better known as Mighty RX. This was Elite Podcast. We'll see y'all in the next time.